Hello, everybody. Tim Hughes here. I'm here with Dhariana, and we're going to be talking about social media strategy. Do you have one? How to create one? Everything to do with social media strategy. So, Dhariana, tell us, where can people find you?
Yes, so you can find me on LinkedIn at Dhariana Lozano or on Instagram at Darilo, Dharilo. Just a little bit of my first and my last names mashed up.
And congratulations on your future wedding.
Thank
Though
you so much. I
some people watching
appreciate
this may be in the past.
it. So yeah, thank you. It's happening. We're getting it done.
Excellent. And you're based in New York, aren't you?
I am. I am based in New York City.
So how have you where to give us a brief outline of
Yeah.
your journey in terms of understanding social media?
Sure. So I've been in the social media marketing world for 15 years now, which kind of sounds crazy to say, but yes, I started like 2008 or so, and I was planning to go into event planning and stumbled upon social media marketing. And I said, this is where people are. Like, why aren't we doing this at the company that I was working at? And they're like, sure, just you can do it. It was sort of this thing where it's like, okay, whatever. Like, we don't really know, and I fell in love with it. And I've worked with big corporations. I worked with small businesses. I just felt like I was getting brought in at the end of the conversation in um, a lot of the roles that I was in. And so I decided to start my own agency about 8 years ago. So I've had the pleasure of working with small businesses, large businesses. It's amazing to see how people make money and help them on that journey.
Yeah, it's one of the things that I love about this job is about going into different companies and hearing about how they
Yeah,
do things. And I've worked with lots of different companies over the years, and it's
yeah.
always fascinates me. Um, but also I love the fact that you came into social media and then started and kind of fell in love with it. It's kind
Yeah.
of a bit like me, really. I was in a corporate role, and I thought I don't really want to do this. I want to
Yeah.
think about social media.
Right. Right. Yeah. The corporate world is just not for me. And I'm okay with that. Now I still get to work with companies like that, but not be sitting in the office. And that makes me happy. And again, it's just fascinating to see how there's just so many ways that people make money and have businesses. And it's, to me, it's always, I think that's what keeps it fresh, besides the fact that social media changes every single day, it feels like.
Yes, you
It,
got to keep
it,
up with it.
yeah, you've got to keep up.
Well, one of the things I see a lot, and this is really to do with the subject today, which is that I see a lot of what actually when I first went into sales,
Yeah.
I was put on a sales course, and I was taught the difference between a tactic and a strategy, which I didn't
Hmm.
know up until that point.
Right.
And what I see out there in on LinkedIn, especially, people are saying what you need to do is this tactic, or what you need to do is
Right.
this tactic, and it's like, no, 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 no,
No,
no.
yeah.
So email marketing, it's a tactic,
Right.
yeah, and doing one thing isn't necessarily going to give you what you want. Which
Absolutely.
is why I wanted to talk to you today about strategy. So,
Yeah.
to talk to us about what you see in terms of what social media strategy is and why we need to have one, and the difference between that and just doing lots of tactics.
Right. I think people get attracted to tactics because they can give you that like instant return that you're looking for, right? So it's like that influx of likes, or maybe, you hopped on a trend and it's working, or you feel like it's working because you're getting lots of plays. But what I like to look at is like the general atmosphere of the company, of the brand, what the goals are. Do we need more sales? Like, how do we get there? Is it because what's missing? Do we need to grow the audience? Do we need to grow the email list? There's so many different tactics that go into the strategy, but you have to
Yes.
always hold that big vision in mind, because you can get caught up in that. Do this thing, just get a post out, just get a post out. But I think people a lot of the time miss what that end goal is. It's
Mm.
not, I think we're so much past the social media world where all you needed to do was like collect a lot of followers and get a lot of engagement and things happened. People are very smart. People have a lot of messages thrown at them. So you do have to be intentional about what you're posting online, why you're posting it, and then how to measure it. Did you actually get the result that you wanted besides the clicks and the likes and the engagement?
Could you do me a favor? Could you hold your mic away from your hair?
Sure. I'm sorry about that.
Yeah. Thanks.
I can hold
It's
that right
just
here.
yeah. And I'm jealous the fact that you can put a mic against your head. So
Oh, Tim.
so anyway, so we've got. So I agree. You know what we need to be very clear. I have a member of my team. You know, we'll we set up and run a podcast, and we're at 3 months in, and he'll sit there going, "Okay, quiet everybody. So why are we doing this?" You'll say.
That's such a good question.
Are we just doing this because we like to interview people, or what are we going to do? Are we going to make more money, or why are we doing this? And that's so important, isn't it?
It's so important. It's such a simple question, but it's also so easy to overlook. Because again, we get caught up in that day to day. Did I post today? Did we get a sale? Did we? But what are you doing overall? What are the different arms? What are the different? What levers are you pulling? I guess you could say, to get to that end goal. And so, like you said, every once in a while, you do have to ask yourself, and things change, right? So like maybe this month you're selling one product, and then the next month you need to concentrate on the next. Does everything align? Is your messaging aligned? Are your links pointing to the right place? Things that seem so simple, they're so easy to overlook.
And I think there's nothing wrong in doing a top down and a bottom up, and actually saying, this is what we want to do. Okay, we need to do these activities, and then going, okay, well, that actually doesn't meet and is that? Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. Every time I start working with a client, the first thing I do is look at the goals.
Yeah.
Not just the social media goals, but the goals within the business, because nowadays it's so tied in together. And social media can really help you drive that, whether it's just awareness, whether it's you need actual clicks. Those are the things that are really going to determine what you do. And so that's why I always start, I work backwards, but that's how you get the efficient tactics, right? The correct tactics to work for the end goal that you need.
Tell us what you want to do, what you want to achieve from this. What are your goals? And I think that's so critical. And then with that, as you say, having the flexibility to change that, because it's a bit like Threads suddenly appears.
Right, exactly.
And you go, well, what are we going to do with Threads? And then actually it disappears.
Exactly.
2 weeks later. So 1 minute we're all jumping into Threads. What I did, I jumped into Threads.
I did too.
This is the same with Twitter, and I don't have time for all of this. So I then stopped using it, which seems to be exactly what everybody else did.
Exactly. If it's not serving you, there's no point of doing it. So there's these little things in social media that seem like you get really quick wins, but you have to stay the course. Social media is not necessarily you post once and you are going to have a successful business and make millions of dollars. It's really more of a long game. It's more of like the smaller pieces working together to make the machine run.
So if you were working with a client and you were going to build a strategy, and so you sit down on Monday, let's assume that you're meeting face to face, and you're sitting in their office, and they've got whiteboards and everything, anything that you need, and they say sit down, and they say, okay, Dhariana, okay, what do we need to do? How would you open that up, and what would you say?
Sure. I think, of course, with the goals, like I mentioned, but then also really diving into how much content can actually be created and what resources they have. Yes. Yeah. Because we need, where are we driving the traffic to? And what can we talk about? What are those topics that are important, not only to your business, but then also that end user, the consumer? What are they going to care about? And then that's where I start to draw the lines between what we need to say, what's going to add value to the customer, and where that meets in the middle for the company, and what kind of content then supports those goals.
Okay. And I mean, I've deliberately not said platforms, because actually platforms are a tactic.
Yes.
Whether we're going into LinkedIn or TikTok or whatever, at that point, it doesn't matter, because you shouldn't, we haven't even made a decision on that, because what we're doing is we're setting the strategy and the goal.
Right. And then who is in place as well. I think that's really important to think about what your personnel looks like, who is actually going to be creating the content. What kind of content do we want to create? Is it videos? Will that serve the purpose? Do you already have a blog? A lot of companies might have a blog already. That's somewhere where you can pull content. who the key players are. So do we want to get your CEO involved? Do we, is that not the right person? So figuring those steps is first. And you are absolutely right. I think the platform comes a little bit after that, because then we can decide, okay, who is the target audience and where do they hang out? Where are they actually spending their time? You mentioned Threads. We all hopped on Threads. Everyone was on Threads, but who's going to be left there? Is your audience actually there? Does the platform function to support your goals? Those are all things that you have to take into consideration. If you want to be on TikTok, you have to be prepared to make a lot of videos. Can your team actually handle that? Do you have the resources to maybe pay a content creator to come in and shoot all those videos? Those are the things that I take into consideration when building the overall strategy. And then, those
the resource plan, I guess, is really important.
Yeah.
Because and that has an impact clearly on budget, because whether you're employing people or you're going to use an outside agency. But I agree with you. If you're it's always going to, what do you want? Are you just going to put out memes, or are you are you doing 500 or 1,000 word thought leadership pieces?
Right, exactly. And that all relates back to the business. Does it make sense for your business? And can you handle that? I mean, someone, maybe in a B2B business, maybe we're not doing memes. Maybe it is more of the thought out pieces. But yeah, I think resources can get overlooked, or a lot of companies may be like, yeah, we're ready to go on social, but then all these other pieces need to fall into place when it comes to the resources.
So going back to something that you said right at the beginning, and we were working with a company, and we did interviews before we started. We spoke to the social media manager, and we said, right, off the record, we've looked at your content and it's rubbish. And she said, she just looked around and said, you're not recording this? No. She said, yeah, it is. It's rubbish. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're not getting any engagement at all on social media at all. She said, yeah, I know. And we say, so what happens? And she said, oh, well, I get given the content.
Right. Yeah.
And I said, do you ever have the option to push back to say the content you're giving me is rubbish? And she said, well, I do. And then they just keep giving me rubbish.
They just right.
Because all the content was saying how great the company was and how great the products are. And of course, nobody's interested in that.
No, not anymore.
So because we're inundated with messages.
Exactly.
And while we all love our company because it pays the mortgage and puts food on the table, no one else is interested. So what do you ever come across that, and what do you do?
Yeah, I've dealt with that before. I think budget constraints can sometimes limit content, or you don't have the support. And that's just the level of trying to communicate as much as you can the importance of having content that is not just, look at us, we're great, and actually diving into what the end user wants or needs, or how you can add value. And yeah, I've been in that situation myself. And sometimes it's a comparison thing, like, okay, let me do it your way, but then can I have a little runway? Can I have a little room to test a few things? And then you test them, they start to do well, and then you start to get, more attention, or people will actually listen. It's definitely a frustrating position to be in, but unfortunately, you don't always have buy-in, and people don't always understand social media.
Yes. So and the people that own the budget probably may not understand it. So you may be in this push-pull situation. I mean, is testing something that and experimenting something that you would always recommend to people?
Absolutely, because you don't always know what's going to work until you start putting it out there. And with social media, there's also I like to say that there's no wrong way, because I could think something's completely wrong, but then it works for another business. For example, I've seen, Instagram is pushing reels. They really want you to make reels, but there are a ton of accounts that only will do like carousels, and they're doing great because that's the audience that they attract. So you should always test. Sometimes the things you think are going to do amazing flop, and the things that you don't think are going to do that great absolutely take off. And that's so annoying and
I've
frustrating.
written things and I go, this is amazing. This is it. And nothing happens.
Nothing
you
happens.
Just get
I know.
Tumbleweed, it's like. And I put something out yesterday. I thought this is rubbish, and people go, "Oh, this is really good." Oh, right. Okay.
You never know. And things change, right? So before it was more images and then video started to take over. So you always have to test the new things, or like how we all jumped on Threads, right? Because there's this possibility of it being this new network that we can really create an account with. And then we're kind of just crickets,
Yeah. Yeah.
at least for now, until they make changes.
So,
So
so
you should
we,
always test.
so in our preparation call, I wrote down the note: test it organically, then put budget up behind it.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's another great reason to test things organically, because you don't want to waste your money. You don't want to blindly put money behind something you think is going to do well. So if there's anything that you do want to put a budget behind, or you're thinking about using a social media budget, that's when you start to test things, really see what does well organically, and then you can start, putting money behind those posts that work, or create something specifically for ads based on what you see is working on your social media networks.
And I've also written mindset shifts come with building a strategy.
Yes. Yeah. There's so much mindset that goes into social media. I mean, if you think about it, a lot of people struggle with the fact that you're putting your business out there, or yourself, right? If you're a personal brand, you have to put yourself out there. And so that's one big shift. The other shift we've already kind of talked about through this is just thinking more big picture and less about what tactics you're using. I think that's those are like the top main mindset shifts that I think need to happen. And yeah, again, just not chasing that the next trend, or just the vanity metrics. It's really about zooming out and thinking about this overall ecosystem that you're building, because social media is it's your first point of contact with end users and customers. So
Yes.
just taking that shift out of, you know, that day-to-day thing that we're always chasing, I think is really important.
I'm going to write that down, because it's true that social media is now your first point of contact.
Hmm. It really is. We have, when people complain, it's on social media, or you can ask people for feedback on social media and kind of let that drive some business decisions. If you sell t-shirts, you can say, hey, do you like this striped one, or do you like the solid ones?
Hmm.
And the people will tell you what they want. And then you can go and create it and make money. It's really wonderful.
It's an amazing way of getting feedback. I know when I wrote my first book back in 2016, I said you can use social media for basically finding out about product development.
Absolutely.
And people really, and now I'd say here we are in 2023, and everyone goes, well, yeah, of course you'd do that.
It's kind of refreshing, but also like, I know I've been telling you, I've been telling you for such a long time.
The other thing that I've written down also, Diana, is
Hmm.
being intentional.
Yeah. Being intentional, again, it ties into this entire conversation. I think you really have to think about who you're trying to reach, because when social media was first a thing, you just wanted to get out to the masses, as many people as possible, bring everybody in, collect all these followers. And the landscape has changed so much, especially with the algorithms coming into play, controlling more of what the user sees. It's based on how they interact with their posts. So you really have to think about what you're doing. And posting more doesn't necessarily mean that you'll get more reach and more followers. It doesn't really correlate like that. We have accounts where we actually step back from posting a little bit and concentrate on just getting better, more valuable content, because posting every day was actually hurting our reach.
Right.
So it's more about being consistent. It's more about making sure that your content is actually valuable. And we throw this word value around, but value is in, what can that audience member take away from that post? Are they just there to entertain? Like, again, being intentional. Do I want to entertain them today? Do I want to tell them about this product? Have I been hearing a lot of questions about my service that I need to answer? So it's just really thinking about what that post does for you.
Yeah, and also about moving away from talking about the product and service, and
Absolutely. Yeah.
maybe talking about the culture,
Absolutely.
or
Yeah. Yeah.
we're doing a charity day, or we're running a women's group, or we're
It's so important.
whatever it is.
Yeah.
And showing the and this is one of the scary things. It's you go into an organization and they go, yeah, we're all about culture here. You go, oh yeah,
Right.
okay. You can't see that from your social media, but if you actually inverted this and actually showed people the wonderful culture that you get, you'd have people queuing up both to buy and to come and work for you.
Yeah, that's so
And then,
important. Yes, it's so important. That's a huge thing. So I'm glad you are talking about that, that exposing themselves a little bit more. People are, you're taught to kind of hold back in business, but nowadays people really want to get to know the people behind the business, what they're putting their money towards. And I work with restaurants. People want to know where the meat is coming from. Is it organic?
yep,
Like, people are actually asking these questions now. So
yep.
you have to take that into account. What are the values of the company? What do they actually stand for? Are they actually donating if they're claiming to? People care more. So that's a very excellent point, is that culture and going behind the scenes. Don't be afraid to do that. People want to see that.
And those things are, those, if you behind the scenes, and those people actually kind of expect a lower quality in
Oh,
terms of,
yeah.
you can do it with you can do most things with an iPhone anyway from a video
Yeah.
perspective. But you're not expecting something that's high quality.
No, not anymore. Once Instagram stories really took off, the barrier to entry just kind of lowered, which is great for small businesses who can't afford a video team. And again, that's another mindset shift. Don't let that stop you. Just because
Yeah.
you don't have a Hollywood production, that doesn't mean that you can't post something. But just put it out there as best as you can. Social media is always evolving. People will watch you grow. It's kind of interesting to see that process with brands as well. So do what you can, but get your message out there, get posting.
Diana, thank you so much for coming on today and talking about social media strategy. I find it fascinating, and thank you for giving us your insights and your masterclass into social media strategy. So remind people where they can find you.
Sure. So my website is darilo.com. You can find me on LinkedIn just at Dhariana Lozano, and I am on Instagram and Twitter at Darilo, DHARILO.
And I know that you're. I think I found you through Keith Keller on Twitter anyway. So
Yes, yeah.
rather than LinkedIn and that. So, but thank you so much for coming on and
Thank you
talking.
for having me. Thank you. It was so fun.
Good. Thank you.